Welcome back. Tuesday morning, Rodger Wyland with Big Board Sports. My producer is Brady Farkas. We've got you covered 10 to noon. We follow Mike and Mike, and we take you right up to Hahn and Humpty. NFL training camps certainly are underway, and an interesting signing by the Buffalo Bills yesterday. That would be Reggie Bush. And for more on that and a little landscape early on here of what's happening in Rochester with the Bills, our good friend Jay Skurski, Buffalo Bills beat writer, does a great job writing for the Buffalo News. Jay, Rodger Wyland in Albany. Good morning, my man.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Let's start with Reggie, right? That was, I would say, that was your A topic yesterday. What's behind the Reggie Bush signing? Is there anything left in those legs? And I guess he's a little backup to McCoy, but are they going to get mileage out of Reggie Bush?
Well, you said it there. I mean, he's going to be the backup to LaShawn McCoy, and then, the question becomes, can he, this team needs a punt returner, and he's going to get the opportunity to win that job as well. And those would be his two primary functions here, and why he's here in Buffalo. First, to back up LaShawn McCoy, and then to see if he can win the punt return job. And, the need arose after Carlos Williams, who was penciled in to be the backup, was suspended for the first 4 games. So that's kind of where the interest in Reggie Bush started, and why you see him here in Buffalo now.
So then, Jay, he is going to get a chance here. You just mentioned Carlos Williams suspended for the first 4 games. Reggie Bush is going to get a chance to contribute to the Bills.
Yeah, he's going to get every opportunity here. He's coming in pretty much at the start of training camp, so he should have enough time to learn the offense and try to get up to speed. And we'll see, how much he does here early in camp, coming off the knee injury. But I would expect that the Bills want to get as good of a look at him as they possibly can. So, I would anticipate in the preseason games, as soon as he's physically ready to go, that we'll see quite a bit of him, just to see, like you said, what does he have left in those legs at 31 years old and with 10 seasons in the NFL. I'm sure that they're very curious as to, how he's rehabbed from that injury. Obviously, he's passed their physical and they're satisfied from that regard, but, something happens to LaShawn McCoy, all of a sudden Reggie Bush is playing a pretty important part in this offense. So I do think that during the preseason and the training camp that we'll get an extended look at him.
Well, he's done it before, right? Receiver and returner. He topped 1,000 yards rushing twice, most recently in 2013, and he had over 1,000 yards in 14 games with Detroit. But the biggest thing will be, when the comma is when healthy, Jay, right? That's the key with any player, but certainly with Reggie Bush.
Yeah, right. And I guess that's kind of the key also with LaShawn McCoy too, because those opportunities for Reggie Bush are not really going to be all that. They're not really going to be there as long as LaShawn McCoy is healthy, because all things being equal, you want LaShawn McCoy on the field as much as possible. So it is an interesting signing in the sense that LaShawn McCoy and Reggie Bush are sort of the same physical makeup, sort of the same style of runner. They're not the downhill type of run you over type runner. They're more run around you. So in that sense, it was kind of an interesting signing. You'd think when Carlos Williams goes out that maybe they'd look for a bigger type of running back, but they've got a couple of those in training camp, so maybe they're just kind of waiting to see what they get out of guys like James Wilder and Jonathan Williams, who are already in camp. And then with Reggie Bush, again, like I mentioned before, I don't think you can discount the ability on special teams and the possibilities there. I think he's going to get a real chance to win some return jobs, and he could contribute to the team in that regard as well.
Jay, Brady Farkas here. Tyrod Taylor, we'll stick with the offense. How has Taylor looked? Can he prove to the organization that he's a long-term solution at quarterback?
Yeah, going back to the spring, he looks great. He looks like he has really progressed from year 1 to year 2 in this offense. He looks really comfortable. He was starting to really kind of survey the whole field, which was kind of a knock against him last year, that he didn't, attack the middle of the field too much. We saw some of that in the spring. Now, granted, the defense isn't trying to sack him, and an interception isn't going to be the end of the world, where in the regular season it might. So it's maybe a little bit too early to draw any real hard and fast conclusions on Tyrod Taylor, but really his offseason has been everything that you'd want it to be. He seems to have put in the work. He understands this offense. He's developing as a leader. He's played his contract situation absolutely perfectly, said all the right things about that. So I think there's a lot to like about what Tyrod Taylor has done this offseason. Now, obviously, that needs to translate to September, and he needs to take the next step once the regular season gets here, he needs to show that he can stay healthy. I know he only missed 2 games last year, but franchise quarterbacks, by and large, don't miss a lot of time. And Tyrod Taylor is not the biggest guy, so I think his health is going to be something that's closely monitored. How many rushing attempts he has, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think he's closing in on a contract extension here with the Bills. Now, will that come before the season? Maybe during the season? I think that remains to be seen. It's kind of a tricky negotiation on both sides, but there's been a lot to like about what Tyrod Taylor's done.
We are talking Buffalo Bills football here on Big Board Sports on this Tuesday morning. Jay Skurski from the Buffalo News is our guest. Jay, haven't heard any crazy predictions or really any outrageous comments from Rex Ryan so far. Has he been a little bit quiet for the most part?
Yeah, I guess for the most part, yeah. And really that's kind of been the training camp as a whole through the first few practices here. There hasn't been as much of a buzz, and I guess that's understandable considering it's not new anymore. Rex Ryan was here last year, so that intrigue in going to see Rex at his first camp is gone now. But I think part of that also speaks to maybe just the expectations for this team and the disappointment that there was from last year when it missed the playoffs. I think a lot of fans here in Buffalo, and I guess rightfully so, are kind of in the show me, don't tell me mode with Rex Ryan, and that's totally understandable. I mean, they came in last year and he talked a big game about where they were going to finish defensively, and they fell way short of that right now. So I think a lot of fans are maybe kind of telling Rex Ryan ever so subtly, like, hey, you need to go out and prove it. You don't need to tell me about it. You got to prove it now. Yeah,
because last year was extremely disappointing because I thought he had the personnel to have a really good defense last year, and it never materialized for a number of different reasons. Can he right the ship this year with the defense? Can this defense be really good in Buffalo?
Well, that's the big question. I mean, that is probably the question, I think, outside of, is Tyrod Taylor a franchise quarterback? Because that always takes precedence. But the next biggest question for this team is what kind of improvements can they make defensively? Can they get to be a playoff caliber defense? And they had 2 years ago under Jim Schwartz. They did a lot of great things. Everybody knows it's been talked about quite a bit about, the failures and the step back that they took. It's going to be tough this year. They've had some personnel changeover. Their first-round pick, Shaq Lawson, is going to miss a chunk of the season. We're not exactly sure just how much yet after having shoulder surgery. So that being said, though, there are still some really good pieces on this defense. Marcel Darius and Jerry Hughes up front, and they've got a dynamite secondary with Stephon Gilmore and Ronald Darby. So there are a lot of good pieces here. Really, I think the excuses for Rex Ryan have dried up. I mean, he has to go out there and do it right now because there are several talented players on this defense, and I think it's a defense that you can win with.
Part of the reason, Jay, that the defense kind of deteriorated last year was all the penalties, and a lot of them senseless penalties. We know that Rex and his staff have implemented penalties in camp for committing penalties. How much of an emphasis is being put on just staying disciplined?
Yeah, it's a huge one. I mean, they were, I believe, the first or second most penalized team last year, along with Tampa Bay. So, I mean, to think that it wasn't a huge problem for the team and didn't impact the results of the games is false. Now, it did get a little bit better as the season went on, but it was still far too high. And Rex has done everything that he can. He's reached in his bag of tricks for everything. I mean, they're doing push-ups for penalties. They're running laps. I mean, it's old school, like junior varsity type stuff right now. But that's what he feels like he has to do to get through to these guys. But there's no question that there's a huge emphasis right now being placed on becoming a more disciplined football team under Rex Ryan.
Hey, Jay, how about Cardale Jones? How's he looked? A lot of raw talent there. Has he got the makings of a pro QB?
He's struggled right now. I mean, he's kind of all over the place. And Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator, mentioned during the spring that they're kind of throwing everything at him, and you can tell he's quite frankly, I think, a little bit in over his head right now. But there is, like you said, I mean, the guy's got a rocket for an arm. So as far as a project quarterback goes, it's worth giving him a year as the third quarterback, which is what they're going to do. And to see whether he can develop into anything. But I think right now it's far too early to say with any certainty that this guy is going to be, the next Tom Brady or, the next late round quarterback who really develops into a steal. I think he's got a lot of work to get to that point.
I got to go back to the defense just because when we think of Rex, we think of defense. You mentioned Stephon Gilmore, their elite defensive back. He came to camp, which was step one. Are they going to get a long-term deal done, and how's that going to play out?
Well, I don't think you're going to see anything happen until they decide what they're going to do with Tyrod Taylor. I think a quarterback takes precedence over a cornerback in terms of contract negotiations. So if they're able to get a team-friendly deal with Tyrod Taylor worked out, and then they can kind of reassess where they're at under the salary cap, I think then maybe you see something happen with Stephon Gilmore. But when you look at what the cornerback market has or what has happened to the cornerback market this offseason, particularly with Josh Norman in Washington, if Stephon Gilmore wants that kind of money, I don't see there's any way that the Bills are able to keep him. I think maybe the best-case scenario for Bills fans is that they work out an agreement with Taylor, and then they're able to use the franchise tag next year on Gilmore to at least keep him around for another year. But I don't see any way that they're going to be able to sign a long-term deal if he wants Josh Norman money, because they just can't, quite frankly, they can't afford to commit that many dollars to the defensive side of the ball. I mean, they've already paid quite a few guys on that defensive side of the ball, and I just don't know that there's room for Gilmore.
Jay, I just want to know if the Bills are going to make the playoffs. Is this the year?
You and Bills Nation here with 16 years in running. I mean, I went game by game, a few weeks ago, and I could see a 9-win season. That's sort of where I had them right now. Obviously, a lot will change, depending on health and things like that. But I don't see any reason why this team can't compete for a wild card spot. And I'll say that if they don't, then it's a huge disappointment. And I think maybe we're talking next year about possibly a new coach being in here if this team falls really far short of the playoffs and sort of has a blow-up type of a year.
Wow, so you think they would fire if they don't make the postseason? You're telling all the Buffalo Bills fans right here in the Capital Region that they would highly consider making a coaching move and out with Rex Ryan after a couple of years.
Well, it's got to go bad. I mean, they were 8-8 last year. It's got to go down to 6-10 or 5-11 type of season. The defense has got to, look like it hasn't made any progress. And then I think absolutely it's a possibility. Now, if they go 10-6 and miss out on, a tiebreaker because of the wild card, I think you can make a pretty easy case to bring them back, and I think they would. But I think, if things go south in a hurry here in this season, then absolutely, I think it's very realistic possibility that Rex Ryan is not back next year.
Interesting. Hey, listen, Tom Brady's not a quarterback for the first 4 games in New England. Take advantage of that.
And one of those games is against the Bills.
That's right.
That becomes a must-win game for the Bills, no question about it.
What week is that? How many weeks in?
That's week 4.
Week 4. All right. We'll circle that one. I'm sure we'll get back in touch with you, Jay. Do a great job writing for the Buffalo News and covering the Bills. And as always, thanks for a few minutes here on Big Board Sports.